Hello and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Crew Motorfest map, which was recently revealed. As we all know by now, this upcoming game is going to be set on the Hawaiian island of Oahu, which of course was where the original Test Drive Unlimited game was set, and one of the locations in Test Drive Unlimited 2. I also think that I'm right in saying some of the team that worked on those games now work at Ivory Tower, who are developing this game. I therefore can't help making comparisons to that game. The first difference being that this is a shrunk down version of the island, much like the Crew and the Crew 2 were a shrunk version of the USA, of course, because a full-scale map of that would be pretty much impossible. Test Drive Unlimited games, however, are always a one-to-one replica of their respective locations, so they had a one-to-one scale of that map. Which is pretty incredible, actually, especially given that first one of those games released in 2006. Whilst this map is not as big as that one, it doesn't look too far off, actually, looking at the overall map that they've shared here, and it seems to have all the key locations that that map did, plus using their creative license more besides that. Let's start at the bottom of the map here in Honolulu, which is actually where you started the first test drive. You'd go and buy your first car and first house in this sort of area. It will be good to have some proper high-rise cities in an open world again, as that's something Forza particularly has been lacking recently, which is of course the biggest open world game out there at the moment. Just to the right of the city, there is this crater, which is very familiar to me from the original Test Drive game, in particular as you start at this end of the map. Just above this, further to the right, is the Motorfest itself. I assume this is where we'll start, or at least be based, which will be very nostalgic, given it's near where we started in that original Test Drive Unlimited game. As we've started to move in this direction, let's continue to move anti-clockwise. There are, over to the right here, a couple of islands in the Pacific, which in Test Drive we couldn't really visit, even the fully modelled and fictional Eden Island that they put in there, which the developers kind of hid in that game, a little bit of an Easter egg. This is the Crew though, so presumably we can swap into an aeroplane or a boat and visit all these islands and some of the other ones that we'll look at further up as well. There are a few towns and things scattered further up the east coast, but nothing particularly different to what is there in reality or in the Test Drive games. However, when we get a bit further up, in this sort of grey section, I can't help thinking this looks like the outline of a track, which actually goes out across the sea and has bridgy bits, maybe even underwatery bits. It actually kind of makes me think it might in some ways be similar to the big island that they added recently in the Crew 2. Moving around to the top of the map, we have another island all the way around here. There's not a lot of different or interesting stuff here, it's just kind of what's usually here. Although there's a long straight runway or something here, which might be drag racy area. Anyway, below this, roughly where it says Halewa here, is where the first house was on this island in Test Drive Unlimited 2. Well, I say house, it was just a Nissan hut with the two-car garage next to it, of course, in a separate building. Further west, we have the airport, of course, where you first arrive on this island in TDU2 after you reach a certain level in Ibiza, and next to that was, of course, the racing school. It did mean in Test Drive Unlimited 2 you initially spent much of your time in this top part of the island, so this part will be very familiar to me once we get up this far, because it's quite a drive from the bottom of the map, even though this isn't a one-to-one scale replica. Round to the west coast we have this sort of grey volcanic-y area, which looks to have some interesting roads in it, more than we had in TDU2, somewhere around this area. I think it was actually on one of these roads just below. In Test Drive Unlimited 2 was one of my completely favourite houses in that game, the one with the literal waterfall going through its living room. It actually had its own road that led to it, which I think was fictional, so that's not in here. But that was pretty incredible, so driving that area is going to remind me a lot of that game, so I can't wait to drive around here. Because, like I say, that was my absolute favourite house, and driving up and down that drive, I have so many memories of driving that road. There isn't much else further down the coast other than what you expect. But down back on the south of the island, we have a few more built-up areas where I can, of course, remember visiting car dealerships in those test drive games, and, of course, Pearl Harbor, which was a fun industrial-looking area to drive around in and had some great knockout races and things that I can particularly remember doing in Test Drive Unlimited 2. Then we just sort of have the center of the map where Oahu is. Apart from that, this area was pretty much empty in the test drive games, although here it looks like it's much more densely populated than it was in those. Obviously we had this town modelled in test drive, but I don't remember all of these roads down here. We had one motorway, basically, that went all the way down, as far as I can remember. So yeah, it is really good to see that the map is more densely populated, as a lot of games are making their maps larger and larger, and end up with sparsely populated areas, particularly in the middle. Big bits of desert and stuff, for example, in Forza. The Crew, though, have done a much smaller map here than previously, but it still looks to have a lot going on. So, although it's a smaller version of the map than Test Drive used to do in their Unlimited games, it looks like it's at least as densely packed in there. It looks like it has everything those had, plus some more kind of fictional locations that they've put in to fill it out. So overall, it's looking like a pretty fun map, and it's going to bring back so many memories from those old Test Drive games, so I can't wait to get playing this. That, though, is going to do it for my very first look at the Crew Motorfest's map, of course being set on the Hawaiian island of Oahu, which meant a lot of comparisons were drawn between this and the old Test Drive games, of course, not really much helping that. That's my obvious comparison to go to. It does look like, despite not being as big as that map, all the important stuff is packed in, hopefully making it densely populated with interesting roads and other locations. I am very much looking forward to driving on this island in a modern game, so I can't wait for this one. Luckily, though, we only have to wait until September, which is to the delight of Earth, Wind and Fire, to play this game, or sooner for the beta, which is, well, very soon. As ever, though, do let me know what you think of the map and of this upcoming game, but for now that is going to be all, so thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back with the next video very soon.